On September 27, 2019, my daughter passed away after going to two different hospitals seeking help. She was 30 years old. She had been dealing with two very large, painful ovarian cysts for about a year, and she'd gone to her favorite hospital on the north side of Atlanta, and they were the first to turn her away. But before I tell you her story, let me tell you mine. Because 9 years before this, I had dealt with my own hospital emergency. And despite receiving the kind of care that kills countless Black women in the U.S., I survived. Let me tell you why. In January 2010, I found out I was pregnant. This was quite a surprise since I had had my tubes tied in 2008. I didn't know at the time that the Assure procedure had a high failure rate and that oops babies was a common side effect. I just know that I was completely blown away by the news. I had been experiencing severe pain on my left side for months and I thought I was dying. I remember thinking, when the new year comes, I'm probably going to have just a few months left to live. And then one day my fiance said, "I think you're pregnant." I looked at him like he was crazy, but he's a rare man who really pays attention to the women in his life. And he always knows when my cycle is about to come on or should have come on, which is something I couldn't keep up with because I had very irregular cycles. And he grew up with a lot of sisters, and we have 3 daughters. So he's used to buying pads and preparing heat pads and rubbing backs. So when he brought the test home and confirmed that I was pregnant, I was not in the best mood for a minute. But I got over it. I love children and this was no different. But within a week of finding out, I started to bleed. Not a lot, just a few drops. So I went to Dr. Google because at the time I worked for myself and I didn't have any insurance. And according to the good doctor, this was a common issue for women. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't anything to worry about. They also pointed out that every pregnancy is different. And even though I had 5 healthy children, I'd had a miscarriage in my late 20s. And I remember that being like a gush of fluid blood situation, not drops. I also had very complicated pregnancies because I was small at the time and I was put on bed rest because I would go into labor if I had any strenuous activity. So that was back then when I was a size 3 and willing to do what I had to do to bring my children into the world. But it was 2010, I was 38 years old and I was 145 pounds. So I decided to take the internet's advice. This is probably no big deal. I promised myself I would go to the doctor if it happened again. So 2 days later, while I was shopping, I felt a tickle, just a little bit of a trickle. I kept my promise and went to the nearest emergency room. Now, this hospital is one I had delivered my oldest son at, but it had dropped off. It now had the reputation for being a killing hospital. These are the type of hospitals that are notorious for providing care that's so bad they literally have to change their name to outrun the lawsuits. I went because I thought they're just going to put me on bed rest. I know the routine. Even though I was having symptoms I'd never had before, I still felt like I knew enough to guess at what was going to happen. I went in around 11 or 12 noon in the afternoon, 11 or 12, and they called me back pretty quick. I explained to the doctor what was going on. She was a beautiful Black doctor. She was very kind. She ordered an ultrasound, and I felt good about my visit. I was wheeled into the basement, and while I was undergoing the ultrasound, my situation went from peaceful to crisis. When the radiologist moved the one over my left side, there was a sharp, raw pain that like made me cry out. And then blood just started pouring out like something had ruptured. There was so much blood so fast, she had to get sheets to clean it up. So I asked, is there something wrong with the baby? And she was quiet for a moment. And then she said, the doctor is going to come in and explain everything to you. And then she kept taking the pictures and she kept waving a wand over my left side, and blood just kept pouring out in buckets. When she finished, I cleaned myself up and she wheeled me back up to my room in the ER. So she said, I'll tell the doctor you're back. And I waited thinking this is probably a miscarriage. But the other one wasn't like this, so maybe it's not. I had finally accepted that I was going to have another baby. I had 5 already. We were just going to add this one to the bunch and keep it pushing. But if I'm having a miscarriage, I was going to be saying goodbye to something I had just opened my heart to accepting. So the whole time I'm having this inner monologue, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm bleeding, I'm bleeding. And after an hour and a half, I looked down and saw that blood had dripped down off the bed and was all over the floor, heading towards the door. I'd been pressing the call button, trying to get the nurse to come to the emergency call. I'd been yelling and screaming, and nobody heard me. I was afraid to get out of the bed. I thought I might pass out before I got to the door. Maybe I would slip in the blood. So I called my fiance. At the time, he was working a few streets over from where I was at, and when he heard what was happening, he must have grown wings and flew, because I blinked, and when I looked up, he was standing in the door with the doctors and the nurses. They were about to rush in when the doctor said, no, go get some towels. We have to clean this up before you all go in. And I let them have it. I was like, what happened to y'all? I've been trying to get y'all to come to this room. And that's when somebody said, the button is broke, ma'am. Button was broke. So my fiance said, oh, when I walked up to the nurse's station, they were laughing and joking. One of them was even playing solitaire. I was like, oh my God. I looked at him in disbelief, but he was dead ass. I had never seen him so infuriated. He's tall, he's well built, he's a very calm, gentle man. But that day he looked like he wanted to punch all of them in the face. Like, he was so angry. It actually put me in more danger than before. Because tip number 1 is bring an advocate with you. Try to never go to the emergency room alone. I know the pandemic made this impossible, but I am positive this is why the death rate was so high. Make sure you, at the very least, have phone contact with someone who cares about you, someone who can assist you, someone who hears what's going on and can help you understand what's happening during your health crisis. When the nurse came back with towels, they all came into the room. My fiance came to my side and he comforted me, and his eyes were just watching the staff with just pure hatred. As they were working on me and putting an IV in my arm, my fiance said, what is that? I followed his eyes to the floor and squinted at the little figure in blood. I leaned down and looked closer, and it was a small, pink, tiny little gummy bear, no bigger than a gummy bear. It was my baby. My baby was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. I think I blacked out, or maybe I just went into shock. The next thing I know, I'm crying hysterically. I couldn't believe this was happening. Like, where was I? Who are these people? How is this possible? I just stared at their faces and they morphed into demons. It was like I was inside a pit, a whole cabal of demons. Like, these were not human beings. They just became completely evil to me. I held my fiance's hand and cried like a baby. I was so ashamed. I was a terrible mother. I let my baby come out around these people. I let my baby down. I was supposed to know better, do better, be better. I just wanted to get out of there, to hide, to be left alone. I don't know why I felt so ashamed. Maybe it was because I knew what I would say if I heard somebody in my situation. The first thing I would say, even if I just said it to myself, is, why did you go to the killing hospital? Like, what would make you do that when you know how these people are? And I know why people do it now. You think these people are professionals. This is an urgent situation, but minor. How could they mess this up? But I know now that that's what a group of uncaring people, professional or not, will do. They make a minor issue major, and a life-threatening one is made worse. My fiance was barking at them like they were dogs and going ham like I usually would. But I just laid there sobbing, wishing I could just disappear, wishing they would just go away. But the doctor said, we're going to give you something for pain and we're going to give you something to stop the bleeding. And then my fiance asked, is anybody going to clean her up? She's covered in blood. So the doctor said, we'll get her some sheets and, another gown. And then they left the room. A few minutes later, somebody came in with a pill that was supposed to stop my bleeding. So we asked, where's the pain medication? So the nurse said, I'll go see. We never saw this person again. 20, 30, then 45 minutes passed by. No one brought me anything clean. Nobody came back in the room. So my fiance put on some gloves and he cleaned me up. It was so humiliating. He's still my hero for that. He was near tears as he cleaned up my blood and changed the sheets and called the staff every curse word he could think of. When the nurse finally did come back, it was with discharge papers. My fiance was livid. You're trying to discharge her? And the nurse was like, yes, there's nothing else we can do for her. So my fiance said, you never brought the pain pills and she's still bleeding and she's not going nowhere. Like he was just like, that's it. He was losing it. So tip number 2, don't sign anything you don't agree with. If they want to refuse your treatment, or if they want to do a treatment you don't agree with, or whatever the situation might be, make sure they put in writing your words, your concerns, your objections, and ask for a copy of all of your records. The doctor came in and explained that the OB, a man who wasn't even there, had ordered that I be released. So my fiance said, I don't give a damn what that doctor said. And so, I was just like, please, no, I just want to get out of here. Let's go. I just want to go home. Please just take me home. And so I sat up and leaned over to sign the papers and I blacked out. When I came through, my fiance was on the phone with his boss. When he saw that I was back up, he came over and hugged me, and then he walked out of the room. I think he didn't want me to see him cry. When he came back, he asked me where my purse was, and he got out a pen and paper. And he said, Greg said I need to get names. Mr. Mitchell, my boss's fiance, helped save my life that day. Tip number 3. When your advocate has reached the end of their knowledge, patience, they're burnt out, they need to call someone who is wise, powerful, knowledgeable, and at least rational. Someone who cares about you but can remain calm as they advise you. Within minutes of my fiance getting their names, they came into the room. They had more medication. This time it was for the pain and the bleeding. They brought me another IV bag. They cleaned my bloody sheets and towels up off the floor. I was a human being again. I had somehow turned back into a human being. I left that morning after filing a complaint with the hospital administrator. So many Black women die needlessly from childbirth complications. And 9 years later, my daughter would be one of them. She had been to the same hospital half a dozen times. They were prescribing lots of medications. They recommended that she have surgery to remove the cysts. But she wanted to save her fertility. And so she found out there was a doctor at this hospital who was capable of possibly saving her fertility. And so she waited for months to get an appointment with this doctor. She had no idea her time was running out. Every time she showed up at the ER hoping to get him, he wasn't there. By September, her condition had worsened so much she was just doubled over in pain. She told me an MRI had showed that there was a hole on her left side. I begged her to see a doctor immediately. She agreed, but first she wanted to see the miracle doctor. So she was finally going to see him that Tuesday, and he had promised to do her surgery. When that Tuesday came, she called me on the phone, bawling her eyes out. She said, "They told me I can't see him, Mama. They say they don't have all my records, and unless they have all my records, they won't let me see him." She said, "They were so mean to me, Mama, and I'm in so much pain." I was so angry, so consumed with rage. I begged her, "Please just go to the hospital and tell them whoever is there you want them to do the surgery." She promised that she would. She said, "Okay." I was headed out of town. I had just planned that trip. I had planned a trip. It had taken years for us to be able to go again. And so I was, planning this trip. I could have backed out, but then I found out that she'd gone to the hospital and she hadn't called me. So I got mad all over again. I was like, "Oh, so you don't need a mama now?" So I was in my feelings quite a bit. And so I said, "Well, I'm just going to go out of town." That was my green light. I was only going to be gone for 3 days. And I rationalized in my mind, by the time I come back, she'll be out of the hospital. She'll be recovering. Everything will be fine. So the next day, as I'm getting ready to leave out of town, I found out she'd been released from the hospital. It was only after she died that her fiance insisted that they had refused to treat her. That's when I learned the truth. I went to get her medical records, and what I uncovered made my blood run cold. They had kept her for 12 hours and refused to admit her. The doctor who was supposed to do her surgery months before this, but she refused to let him do the surgery because she wanted this miracle doctor, was the doctor on call in her case. And he had advised that they medicate her, release her, and send her back to his office in 3 days so that he could do her surgery. The radiologist who knew her previous scans and knew her medical history noted that there was a mass in her abdomen that appeared to be new. It appeared to be blood, and it was measurably different from her previous scans. My daughter was dying from sepsis, the number one cause of death in a hospital, and they were refusing to help her. She had told them she didn't want to wait for the miracle doctor anymore. She just wanted the surgery. But this previous doctor, who wasn't even there, made the final decision. She should be medicated and released. Her advocate, her fiance, who was with her, didn't call people who could offer him words of wisdom. He didn't call me or my mom in enough time for anyone to give her good high level advice. She signed the papers when they discharged her, even though her fiance said she didn't want to, because she told them she didn't agree with it. But they have her signature, and it looks like they have her consent. By the time she got to the second hospital a few hours later, they could claim it was too late, even though she was there another 12 hours before she died. They ran out the clock, not wanting to put in the work, the time, or the effort to save her life. I learned there are 3 surgeries that could have been performed that would have saved her life if they had acted promptly, but nobody was willing to do that. I learned so much about how lawyers even work with the medical system to deny fair compensation for medical malpractice cases. In the state of Georgia, they even bought themselves out of liability if they can keep you in the emergency room where the most dangerous, most negligent care is often tolerated. If you don't have the know-how or the financial backing to hold them accountable, they can almost get away with the unimaginable. My 4th tip is the one most dear to my heart. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Do everything you can to never be at the mercy of people who will judge you and decide that if you're overweight, you don't care about your health. If you're poor, you don't deserve good care. If you're black, you don't qualify for excellent service. If you don't have insurance, they don't have to go above and beyond for you. If you're a woman, you're exaggerating. If you have good insurance, they need to run every test, every scan, do every procedure they can think of, whether it's necessary or not. If you have an addiction, your death would be drug related. If you complain the wrong way, they will discharge you and even call the police to have you removed. The least you can do, the very least, is set the standard for your health by making sure it is one of your top priorities. It's open enrollment. Open enrollment is coming. If you don't have good insurance, if you don't have decent insurance, please get some good insurance. Please get some decent insurance. And finally, my 5th tip is to find a good medical professional, someone you can trust, someone who really wants to see you prevent and maintain your health, someone whose every answer is not a pill, someone who won't look for the easy way out, but will help you get healthy advice, help you change your lifestyle, support you in being practical and proactive. If you find someone who really goes above and beyond for their patients, hold on to that doctor for dear life. My daughter's death will not be in vain. For everyone who hears this video, please remember my Alex. And then call your mother when you need help, or a mother figure who really wants to see you win in life. Don't deny yourself the support you deserve. That's my story. Thank you. To your health.